In 3, 2, 1. I think, yeah, we're recording. All right. What's up, Mark?
Hey, how's it going, Lucas?
It's,
And welcome everybody to Deliberation Academy.
I think we're at episode 5 now.
Episode 5. This is going to be a little bit more of a free-form episode, kind of where we started, I suppose. We were just talking about Nick Cannon and some of the things he said, and I kind of summarized that I'm just tired of hearing about celebrities and their shit. I don't care which celebrity you are.
I think everybody's
could you just fuck off?
I'm burnt out right now, actually.
I'm burnt out.
Yeah,
I'm just burnt out on everything.
We all just want to have a vacation, and we can't really get away.
Yeah, exactly. So, I don't know. Anyway, it seems to have been a mostly uneventful week. Uneventful in the spectrum of where we've been over the last several months, I suppose. It's been kind of a dull week by comparison.
Yeah.
No announcements of people annexing people and no crazy, any other crazy stuff. I mean, there's things happening politically. There's some legislation being moved around in certain places, but everything's going a lot slower right now. Or at least it's just more quiet. And I think, people are probably a little bit burnt out. So, I don't know. It's quieter. It's good. There have been some interesting things. I guess, one of the things I saw, I don't know if I sent Lucas this or not this week, but Asheville, North Carolina has unanimously voted for reparations, which doesn't surprise me at all. I know Asheville. Asheville is it's a very liberal hippie town in North Carolina. It's a great place. It's full of great people. But yeah, they sort of unanimously passed that. I don't know what it means. I don't know how they're going to actually enact it. I know it had something to do with putting money into public spaces and pushing for more people of color in certain job positions. I think it was very job focused, actually, the resolution.
Funding to promote home ownership to business opportunities.
Yeah. So that's interesting. We'll see how that works out. It'll be a good fish tank, to kind of observe how that plays out, and if that's see what they do and see if it works or see if it doesn't work, and see what they could what maybe could be improved. It'll be interesting to watch, especially since Asheville is such a small place. I think he could have much more direct effects on the immediate community because it's such a small town.
Which is exactly what our founders would have wanted.
Yeah.
That's kind of funny.
Yeah, no, it's good.
Cities taking charge of their own cities.
Yeah, no, it's good. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I don't know what's going to happen, but we'll see. Started reading The Stand again.
That one movie.
Well, it's actually I'm reading the book. Man, how relevant is that? Jeebus. I think that's why they decided to make a Netflix show out of it, honestly.
They're making a Netflix.
Yeah, they're making a Netflix show, like a show out of it, not just redoing the movie. I think maybe that's because people realized how relevant it is. Remember when we first went into quarantine back in March, and I was like, man, you haven't seen this? You gotta see this. This is it right now. So yeah,
we
maybe
had
that's
so
why
much popcorn.
But
it's like a 6-hour movie or something like that, or like TV series.
It was originally released as a miniseries, and it's somewhere around 6 hours. It's long, but it's
pretty good.
I love it though. Speaking of The Stand and viruses and stuff, man, coronavirus, one of the, I guess, new mutations that's doing really well. I guess it has this,
something with the swine flu or something like that.
It has some sort of a spike that allows it to transfer into other cells. They're calling it COVID-G.
Oh, Jesus.
And it's basically the reason it's doing it's just natural selection, right? Like it has an easier time infecting people. It's 10 times more contagious than the original strain. Let me just screen share this with you real quick. Oops, hold on. Such a dummy. All right. Now I'm going to screen share this with you. Go away. So many things going on this webpage, man. Disabled.
Oh,
of course. Anyway, okay. Well, while you're figuring that out,
you can do it now.
Let's go. Yep. All right, let's go. Here we are. So I don't know if you can see what's going on here, but this is what I'm looking at. Where is it? S-spike protein is found on the surface of the virus and used to gain entry to cells, something like a key in a lock, but the original strain, D614, often broke off when it was attempting to bind to ACE2 receptors in people's airways. The mutated version, G614, is less likely to break off, allowing it more easily to make its way into cells. So yeah, some kind of spike thing. And I guess, the whole deal with it is that it's just, oh, look. Oh, okay, never mind. Sorry. I was like, no way, that guy has it. Let's see. Let's look at the Scientific American. They're usually pretty reliable for things like this. They don't seem too biased from what I remember. Yeah. Paper indicates single amino acid change on the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein. Critically important in the role of the biology of the virus. Yeah. So, the thing there that I'm getting at is it's much more infectious, and it's like if you've had COVID before, like I imagine that since this is a new mutation, like the RNA is actually different. It's an actual different virus. I don't know if the antibodies from the first strain would actually work on the second strain, because if you think, if the first strain is having problems like breaking off with this protein spike breaking off when it's trying to infect cells, and you get that strain, now you have a stronger strain that's even better at doing, whatever it did before. And, what other changes are actually present in this new strain? I don't know. It's interesting to think about, but it is also the thing that really jumps out at me, frankly, is the fact that it's way more contagious, much more infectious than before. So we'll see. I don't know. I think it's going to blow up, especially when you see things that are going on in like, Texas and Florida right now. It's wild. People are just, man, stubborn. Stubborn is all I can think of. Just stubborn. It's like
they don't believe in viruses.
It doesn't even matter, man. Like this mask thing is not a big deal, and people are trying to make it like, oh, it's government overreach. We want to impeach our mayor and our governor because they're making us wear masks because this is unconstitutional. Like, dude, it is just wearing a piece of cloth on your face. Why are you trying to take it to like the Constitution?
Right.
Like, dude, this is such a small thing to ask of the people of a nation, right? Like that's the whole thing that makes us a nation, is that we work together occasionally a little bit, we have some common interest or goal. So it's like, yeah, sometimes the nation is going to ask you.
They could even get a red, white, and blue one. Like they have but they just rather not wear it. It's just like, it's kind of
ask not what your nation can do for you, but what you can do for your nation. Right? Like this
wear
is
a mask.
This is right now the moment you could do that to help your country, and it's such a small price to pay. I mean, Christ, it's just a mask, like it's such a small thing that people are making such a big deal out of. It's wild. It's like,
it's actually embarrassing.
Whether you believe in it or not, like, dude, this is not a big deal. This is such a small thing. So small. Like, and it's for the public health. I mean, I just
you could really tell that those people have never had their limo secured, though.
Dude, nobody likes wearing a mask. All right. It's not like any of us are out here like, yay, yippee. No, I mean, I'm sure there's many germaphobes in the world right now who are both excited and also paranoid because now for the first time, people are actually wearing masks in public so they can feel safer. But also there's a virus on the loose. So that's everywhere. So I don't know. They're probably living in some sort of weird limbo state right now, I suppose. But man, I just think like, at what point can our nation ask us to do something? You know, in the early days, before we had a military, the nation asked you to go up in arms against a foreign power, right?
To be fair, nobody's really asked us to do anything. They've told us to do stuff. Like nobody's gone out there and said, "Please." But I mean, like,
we have to pussyfoot around every single issue down to, could you please wear a mask because there's a virus infecting everyone and like killing an alarming rate of people, and it's such a small thing. You know what? I just can't get behind it, right? And I've heard a lot of people say this is government overreach on the left and on the right. I've heard people talking about things that they're doing to try and contain coronavirus as government overreach. Like, dude, what are you just? Do you see this as a plague and we just need to let it happen, or like?
Well, they don't know any better.
What's your jazz?
They don't know any better. They that's all they know. They see that the government's telling them to wear a mask. They don't know anybody really dying. But my brother just told me that the director of the CDC said, like, within 4 weeks, everybody in America is going to know one person who is seriously affected by COVID-19. Whether that's fighting for your life, whether fighting for your life or they're going to be dead. Every single American will agree with that. And like, I don't know, my brother's been right about everything so far, like literally everything. And so I would take his word very seriously. And that's why, like, I wear a mask when I go out. Like, I actually don't even really go out. Like, I really don't. Like, I just stay home. I just stay home, and maybe I'll go get a workout in, like go for a bike ride. But I stay away from people, and that's it.
I've just been working on the yard a lot.
Yeah,
laying a lot of paved stones.
Yeah,
but yeah, no, I mean, it's just like, I feel like this is such a small thing to ask. Just wear a mask. Come on, such a small thing for your nation to ask of you for the health of the nation. I mean, come on, where is our American spirit?
Yeah,
I don't know, but on the bright side, well, definitely on the bright side, as the sun is tearing through the United States and burning California to a crisp. The hottest temperature ever recorded on Earth was recorded, I think, yesterday at 130 degrees in Death Valley, California.
At 100 and what?
30.
Holy smokes. That's
the hottest temperature that's ever been recorded on Earth, ever. That's been recorded, by humans, right?
2020 is like a record year for everybody.
And theoretically, I'm not totally certain about this, but isn't heat bad for coronavirus? Maybe this is a good thing. We're having the heat wave power through.
My brother already said that wasn't a thing, because he said that the test case for that was pretty much disproven because of South America and how coronavirus is
exploding there.
Yeah. So he's like, that's really not a thing.
What a bummer. But dang, dude, 130 degrees. That was recorded in Furnace Creek, which is like a weather recording station. I went to Furnace Creek actually in 2018, and let me tell you, it was hot as fuck. It was so hot, and there was danger signs, just like a red stop sign, in the middle of the desert, in the middle of the desert, and that just said if you go past here, you may suffer extreme heat death. I was like, whoa. There's just nothing anywhere, and then just in the middle
and there's nobody that come in to help you either.
No, and there's just a red sign there. Anyway, it was hot there, and now it's much, much, much hotter. When I was there, I felt like I was about to catch on fire, and it was only 100 degrees. So 130 degrees. That's got to be really hot. I don't know. So I'm missing a lot of the heat wave, actually. I'm just barely in the region where it's ending. Yeah. But it was really hot here last week. We were at 100 degrees for a chunk of the week. So it was hot.
Yeah.
Hot, hot, hot. It's almost like we're just being inflicted with, sort of plagues, right?
Yeah.
Like
Like all of the plagues from Moses.
disease, heat, like our crops were getting raised, there's the locusts, like,
Yeah. We're about to see some frogs coming around next.
dude, I know. It's wild. The plague, has, there was a plague death in Mongolia, and the plague has been detected here in Colorado, in Fort Collins,
Oh,
in the wildlife. Like the plague, the bubonic plague, the black plague that killed a third of Europe.
well,
Isn't that wild?
I don't know anymore. I don't
It's
know
wild to
anymore.
me that it just happened to pop up in Mongolia and in
It's
fucking
why
Colorado at the same. We're across the world, and here we are.
it's wild to me that like we actually have people who are trained to take care of this, to lock society down so they can monitor the virus and be able, so we can all resume our normal
They weren't
lives.
trained very well because they didn't expect everyone to just ignore everything they say.
That's like the one problem. Like that's like the thing. Like maybe
They
China's
didn't plan
destined
for
to
that
win.
part. They were like,
Like
in this event, we're gonna do all these things, and they're like, great, that sounds like a good plan. And then they were like, they got here and they're like, hey guys, we have a plan for this. Here's the steps, and everyone was like,
they're like,
no.
screw you, America, liberty.
Oh,
Did you
in the
see
name
like
of
in Los
liberty.
Angeles how there were like, we're not having any fireworks this year, but there was like a record number of fireworks just going off left and right in LA. There's so much cool footage of that.
Yeah, there was that here too, and in New York.
I threw my drone up and I was just like, saw it real quick. Yeah,
It's pretty awesome,
cool.
man. Wild coronavirus, heat wave, economy's in the it's in the chute.
Yeah.
I think our unemployment right now is actually the highest it's been in quite a long time.
It's not gonna get any better anytime soon.
Ooh, it's not. Unless the farmers, start hiring on a bunch of people, because we're now having to cook for America again.
That'd be kind of
Think about that. We could actually,
get the
that
good
would be
old
an
farmers
interesting.
union going.
I mean, there's already the farmers union, but I'm saying,
No, I just thought.
like, wow, we June 2020 unemployment 15%. That's insane. That's like 5 times higher than,
This is why like
usual.
I understand where people are just like, we just need to get high the entire pandemic. Like, like I know people like that. They're like, just like, dude, I can't handle this type of stress. Like, it's just too much. Like, it's a lot for people to handle, man. Like,
well, that's a lot going on, honestly. But dude, maybe I've been starting to think, a couple days ago though. Sorry, I'll let you finish.
No, sorry. My point was like I was listening to the Joe Rogan show with Peter Schiff, and one of the points like Peter Schiff wasn't getting, and Joe Rogan was telling you, it was like, dude, like it's been 4 months now. Some people have been out of work for 4 months. Like the average person, like sure they could say like 1 month is responsible, like you should have a month of saving, but 4 months, that's a quarter of a year. Like that's a long time. Like the average,
it's a third of a year, but okay.
Yeah, that's, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That's a long time, and like the end is nowhere in sight, and like that's where I'm just like, capitalism is failing in some aspects,
I don't know, man. What I was going to say is, I think in some ways this may be the best thing to happen to America in a long time, because what if we see a lot of radical changes that we've just been needing for a while? Like I was saying a second ago with the farmers, like, what if our supply chain for food stays broken for so long that we have to like start up farming in America again, and actually producing food for Americans instead of like for cows and like for other countries? That like, I think it's around 70% of the lobsters pulled out of Maine are sold to China.
Wow.
Yeah, isn't that wild? And we don't produce a lot of food in America. What if this whole thing ends up, really turning around the way that we do things in America? I was reading an article about, how farmers have been impacted so far by this, because, 70%, I think it was, of their sales, farmers, goes to the restaurant industry in America. And when the restaurants got shut down, they had nowhere to divert that stuff because the other market just could not absorb that amount of product. And so they've actually been burning their crops. But they also, one of the things they were reporting was that the level of spending on dining out by the average American has gone down by like some insane amount. They were saying that somewhere around 50 to 70% of people's budget for food was on dining out, and that has massively dropped, and that, largely people are buying more in bulk and cooking at home. And because they're buying in bulk, they're buying like raw ingredient type stuff instead of, just junk food or snack food or whatever. And yeah, man, I don't know. What if this whole thing, we were seeing opportunities arise, and we're seeing things sort of shift and change now to where a lot of types of corporations have realized that, we can just have people work from home, right? So instantly right there, you have that much more time, in your day, just given back to you. Time spent in commuting,
very liberating.
time spent, getting up, getting ready, so much time has just been given back to you. And I think a lot of the workforce will probably stay this way, given certain career positions or career fields. I mean, and well, I don't think people will go back. I think people, like, what another article was talking about, how many of the leases for large buildings that businesses rent out in New York City are up. The leases came up, and the companies realized that they could save all that money, which is millions and millions and millions of dollars for the leases in those giant office buildings in New York. They realized they could just save all of that money and just have people work from home. A lot, even months ago, several companies decided that they were just going to permanently shift to a work from home environment.
Which is actually,
and now
really
we're even deeper.
Cool opportunity to create housing in those same buildings.
Yeah, exactly.
Really
it's
nice
just open space,
Yeah.
And so, given all of these things together, seeing people buying more stuff, probably learning to cook, frankly. If you look at a lot of like millennial age people, and, even a little bit before that, all of us like 90s kids, and none of them really knew how to cook or anything, or did much cooking. And now that everybody's at home, they're learning how to do these things for themselves, and, being forced to stay at home for some will mean, spending a lot more time with your family. And for some will mean a lot more isolation, obviously. But I don't know, man. I think things could radically change. If, like I said, if the supply chain stays broken and we just can't get food from other places, and we just have to start making, growing our own food here, that could open up a ton of jobs if we started, really putting into our the American farming, creating lots of jobs. And then you don't have to be at some desk job. And then it would actually be something that America is producing, right? Which would also be a bonus, I don't know, man. We'll see what happens. But I think this could be a good opportunity for America to like turn some shit around economically and just in the quality of our lives and the way that we do things. If we could all just get along for 5 minutes, we could, see this as a incredible opportunity for transformation in the way that we do everything. And I'm sure lots of people are seeing it as an opportunity for transformation. However, they're just not seeing it in the type of transformation I am envisioning. I think mine is probably a lot more positive than theirs, but there you go. You're not going to agree with everybody. That's just not how it works. So I don't know. It's fun to speculate.
That makes the most logical sense to try to make the best that we can out of this situation. Like, why try to make everything worse? Why try to tear down our infrastructure? Like, that's what like a revolution would do, for instance. Like tearing buildings down, like that's just equals into actual assets being lost that we could use.
Reuse them. They're already there. Yeah. So just put different stuff inside.
Exactly.
I mean, come on. It's like, it's resources, man. It's so much resources. There was actually a movement. I can't remember exactly what they were called. What was it? It was like a philosophical movement. and Dan Carlin has spoken about them at one point. But they basically, core to their idea was tearing down everything old. Like tearing everything down that was old. Institutions, buildings, governments, everything, and
The
replacing it with...
anarchists.
No, they weren't anarchists. They were just like futurists, I think is what it was. I think they were called the futurists, and
Okay.
they were all about just tear it all down. They also believed in a very sort of militant, tyrannical sort of way of doing things.
It kind of sounds like an anarchist. I don't know.
Anarchists don't believe in having a militant government. They believe in not
they believe
having
in,
a government.
yeah, but they believe in tearing everything down, the current status quo down, so something newer may hopefully arise.
They weren't, definitely wasn't the futurists, but the point is that they were very hardcore, very hardcore, and they were tearing down cultural things too, like music. They were very against stuff, a lot of things like that as well. So I don't know. It was wild. And all their whole thing was, we're just gonna tear it all down and just march forward with brute force of doing things the most efficient and the way that we think the new world should be way, which is, I don't know, something. Anyway, I don't know. I think this is a good opportunity for us all to learn how to slow down a little bit, chill, think about stuff. You know what I mean? Like, so many people have so much extra spare time now. Like, just start thinking about some things.
It's hard for the average person to think about stuff when they're only thinking about keeping food on the table and they don't have food.
I mean,
food.
Yeah,
You know
I understand.
Like, it's very frustrating for those people, and those people exist.
I know. No, I know they definitely do. I actually saw. There's been an increase in homeless people that I have personally seen here in Fort Collins recently, which is pretty sad. When I first went to New York, I had just listened to this podcast with Joe Rogan, and I cannot remember the other guy's name. He's hilarious, though. It's actually one of Joe Rogan's friends. He's been on the show several times. And then anyway, I've been listening to this episode where they talk about love bombs, which, just dropping a fat tip for just random ass people who, just randomly, like, you go to a store and buy like a candy bar and leave them some crazy tip and just like, whatever, their face lights up. And I just listened to that. And when I got to New York and I was feeling very, affluent. I was flush with that separation leave pay. and I'd sold back like a ton of leave days. I was doing okay.
So you're like, I want to try out a love bomb for the first time.
I was dropping it left and right, dude. Anytime any homeless person on the street who asked me for money, I gave them all of the money in my pocket every time. And I was just walking around with 20s all the time. And like, I was giving my bartenders like $100 tips and stuff. And dude, it was such a great feeling. You have any idea how happy I felt all the time? Like, anytime I was just like, hell yeah, dude, I'm about to make your day. Here you go, dude. Oh man, what a good feeling. And I forgot where I was going with this. It had to do with, so I was talking about, the love bomb thing, right? And how I've seen more homeless people, show up in Colorado, and I saw them, and instantly my reaction is, I'll give you something. This is not me making a statement about panhandling. I don't care what anybody who else does. It just makes me feel good giving the shit away. I feel burdened by material things quite often. Money is one of those things, and I feel I am, blessed enough in my life that I have way more than I need. And I am not rich, so don't give me any guff. But but I do feel like I have way more than I need, and it makes me happy to give that stuff away. And I was pulled up. I dropped my mom off at work, and I pulled up to the corner. I wrote the stop sign to leave the parking lot, and there was a homeless guy there with his wife like maybe like a 2-year-old, not even, maybe like a 1-year-old baby max, and another on the way, like sitting on the corner. And I had nothing to give them because I was just taking mom to work, so I had like nothing. So all I could do is just stare at him, look at him, being like, I want to do something. I have nothing to give you currently. And before, that would not have been a thought I would have had. And I know, and the reason I say this is because before, when I was in a similar situation, I would literally just go be like, hold on, I'll be right back. And just go get something like money, food, whatever. Just take the time out of my day and be like, you know what, I don't have anything on me right now. Let's go get something. And then give it to that person. And, you know, I sat there and I was like, you know, I don't have anything with me. And I just kind of drove off and I felt terrible about it. And I don't think that's a statement of me feeling more pressured financially currently. I mean, I definitely am a little bit. This apartment in New York is expensive, that I'm not even in, you know, and I've been flying all, you know, money's going all over the place right now. It's kind of sucks.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah, it really is. You know,
so like and subscribe to our channel.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Oh man.
I don't know what it was. A strange thing, but there's no moral to the story. I just would like to encourage everyone to give more. I think it's a positive thing. It makes you feel good. You know, even if you have a little, giving a little bit of it away just seems to feel good. You know, I don't know. I enjoy it. I think it's worthwhile. I think it's good to give people the time of day and treat them like people, because they are. You know, it's easy to dismiss homeless people as not people, but that's bullshit. They're people. They're people like you and me with thoughts and emotions, you know, feelings, regrets, shame, pride. Like, they're just like us, dealing with what they got to deal with. It's a shame that people are so cruel to them, I think. And there's going to be a lot more of them pretty soon. There's going to be a lot more really soon. You know, I don't know if you remember, but growing up, you know, in 2008, after that whole debacle, due to homelessness where I was living, you know, closer to Colorado Springs. Well, I was living outside Colorado Springs, but, you know, I was going to school and everything inside Colorado Springs. And the homelessness exploded in Colorado Springs during 2008. We had, like, you know, little Hoovervilles all over, of like full families living in tents all over in Colorado Springs for a while there. And it's going to be coming down the line pretty soon here again, I think. You know, so this is a good time to meditate on, I think, you know, how we treat each other and how we see homeless people, because any day now just might be one of them, you know. So I don't know. It's just something to think about. Times are tough, and it's not always, you know, sometimes I feel like it's the luck of the draw that puts you in the situation that you're in. You know, when I was growing up, we boarded this family in our house. We met them through the strangest way. We went to the same dojo, and I was friends with their kids, and my mom was friends with their dad and stuff, and they had some tough times, and before you know it, they moved in with us. You know, which was cool. You know, my buddy, he lived just down the hallway in the basement. We made a room for him out of a, you know, this hallway by the cellar. And his little sister moved in with my little sister, and yeah, life just moved on. And their dad was living, you know, we didn't have another bedroom after that, I think. So I think their dad was living in our RV, you know, next to the house, you know, out in the middle of nowhere. So basically in the house. And, but, you know, gave him a little more personal space, I guess. And we adopted their dog. And when they actually ended up leaving, you know, after they got back on their feet, they did not take the dog with them. They couldn't, but, she was a sweetheart. But they did get back up on their feet eventually, you know. And, you know, the reason that they even got in that position in the first place was just sour luck. You know, their dad was a great guy. He worked real hard. He took care of his kids, loved his kids. And his wife was not so great. And they were basically screwed for a while there. But they got on their feet again, you know. Didn't move very far away from us. Yeah, you know, we can all do it, you know. We all have space. I feel like, you know, even in my apartment in New York, I have helped people out, and that is not a big apartment. You know, you've helped people out, and you had a studio.
Yeah,
you know, like you can do it.
Share.
You can give and help, and you know, I think we got to get in a mindset where we're doing that a lot more. You know, we got to, because we just, it seems like everybody hates everybody right now, and that is not going to work out for very long if the, you know, things keep going the way they go and the economy gets worse, and you know, the virus gets worse and things get locked down, and just things in general get tougher and longer, right? Because we're living, I think, right now, this moment of time that we're still in. It feels, you know, like it's been a long time and things are really tough, but the truth is that we're still in the afterglow of everything that we already had, you know?
Yeah.
They've just you know, imagine it's like a candle and we've burned out all the wax, but it's still going because the wick is wet, right?
Yeah.
That's where we're at right now, because we still have, you know, you can still go on, you know, Amazon and order something. You can still go to a grocery store and get food right now.
Yeah.
You know,
so
lots of places are doing rent deferrals. You know, we are still living in the glow of how things were, you know, in February.
One of the things that Peter Schiff was saying is that like things are never going to get back to the way things were, at least when our 2019 timeframe, because he was going on to explain how like we were in a significant bubble already. So like we were going to have like an economic collapse. And like that's important to note, because like if we were living as if we were creating a bubble, then like it's really hard to go back to those levels of the ideal vision of capitalism, you know.
Right. Yeah. No, I know. And that's what I'm getting at here is, you know, because we're still living in that afterglow of all of that. Once the afterglow runs out, you know, things are really going to actually be hard now. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
My life, you know, again, I'm lucky. I have had great support networks, and, you know, I've been staying with people, stayed with you, staying with my mom now. You know, I'm lucky. Food, not a problem. Having a place to stay is not a problem. You know, like I have very few problems in the world right now, you know, and I think there's a lot of people who, like me, who basically are doing okay. You know, a lot of people are still working, you know, still have their income, you know, whatever. There's a lot of people who are in decent situations, but I think that there's a potential that it's going to, you know, we're going to exit this and every American is going to feel, you know, the brunt of it to some extent pretty soon, because a lot of Americans right now are not feeling the brunt of it. I would say I'm not feeling the brunt of it, so I stay home a lot. Whatever, you know, that's not a big deal. But I think there's the number of people who are feeling the brunt of it is going up, you know, back to that 15% unemployment rate, and it's going to go up and up and up unless things get better. And I don't foresee things getting better anyway, because, you know, how do you reboot a service industry? How do you do that? If no one has any money, no one's paying for services. You know what I mean? So how do you reboot that industry without having actual things that you produce?
That's why I think that we have to get back to producing in America again. Like we don't produce in America right now. So like the shirts that we make, the pants, the shoes, the cars, you know, all of that needs to be produced back. The food, like you were just explaining earlier, how the food's not produced in America. And so that what that really comes down to is that like we're not using our assets that we have here in America wisely, and we're relying on other economies to support us. Thus, why other economies are production economies, whereas we are a service-based economy, basically, that is using credit to be able to bring those items in. Well, now the credit crunch is starting to happen. And the only way to really to solve that issue is to either, you know, slowly pay that back, and it's going to suck because we're still going to rely on these people to make the products that we know how to make, or we're going to make it here, and we're going to use those products and we're going to ship them over there, and they're going to be just as happy because that's how trade works. You know, it's a twofold thing. And so if we're producing items that they like and they want to buy it, which they will, because if we could produce it for better and cheaper than them by competing in a global economy, then, you know, we can make things better. The only problem with that is the whole COVID-19 situation is kind of going to slow down you know, this process, which is why I believe that we need to lock down for like 2 months and then get a huge initiative going to build these factories, to build the, you know, to be able to launch all of this. And that way we could shoot it out and market it out to the world, because the world also is going to need our
Especially
help.
since we need this, you know, we need to get people hired, dude.
Right.
We need to get people jobs.
We could overproduce, and as long as we're like, we could even, America might even consider even issuing an entire new dollar that runs exclusively on this economy that we would create locally. That would be one way to guarantee it, that like people, like, we don't go completely under. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that way we could buy food and we could buy all these other things. And sure, the loans that we have that are connected to, you know, our housing and stuff like that, like that's going to be another issue. But like, I also believe that we have to have a huge housing initiative. Do you know in China that they're launching another huge housing initiative over there? Like, foreign investors are starting to pour money into China's housing market, just because, like, I guess they're seeing like the asset price is going higher and higher, and they're saying it's a bubble. But I don't necessarily see it being a bubble, since they produce all of the world's like items. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's actually like the real epicenter of where real wealth is, according to like Marx's idea of how like an economy works, which is connected to the means of production. Like, if we're not, if we don't have any connection to the means of production, and we're just relying on credit to import our items, then like we're completely out of the loop. You know, it just seems obvious to me. Like, that's what it seems obvious. That is what is happening, because that is what is happening. You know, and these companies are freaking out because they're like, how do we maintain our profits? Because the real problem here in America is, like, if we make these products here, people want a living wage, and it's like, no shit, everybody wants a living wage. So how do we deal with that? Like, we have to think of a new creative way to do it, and that's where I've suggested like a job corps.
Right.
You know, and we've already talked about that before, but basically it would be modeled off of the military. It would be giving them lesser wages, you know, with the promise that you're going to get real life experience working in some type of leadership role as you help produce American products for cheaper, so you can make everybody's lives better off. And, you know, maybe we would negotiate some type of deal with the local universities, so that way we could get you free tuition, and some type of GI Bill type deal, you know, and maybe our job or labor group could even make the actual dorm rooms that these people who graduate from this business, you know, are going
well, dude, they could also do it like the CBs and train like a certain group of this job corps to be, you know, construction people. That's what the CBs are, dude. The CBs are just like the most elite builders in the world.
Right. I mean, you could even activate the CBs, you know, like to be able to help
what I'm saying
out
is,
with
if you could do this job corps just permanently, you just go into the job corps, oh, I'm going to be a construction man, and they train you how to be a construction man, and then you get to go build stuff, you know, like things that people will use. You know, you'd probably build their own like barracks situation where people could live in housing provided to them by the labor brigade, you know. Like, you built this giant complex for people to live in who are working for the same thing you are. You're all just working together. You know, it's funny. It reminds me of something, you know, a lot of people say they can't stand like communism or socialism who are in the military. Which is funny to me, because at its core, it's sort of a very socialist thing, right? Like, if you think of the military as like your government, which, you know, they're part of the government, then they're, you know, they're providing your housing, your paycheck, your education, your insurance, your health care, your clothing. They provide you with everything, and you just do the work that they tell you to do. which is interesting thought. Obviously the military does not produce anything, and that's sort of the problem there. But what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, sorry, my other camera like kind of went out. It was kind of weird. I don't know what happened.
Yeah,
But
I saw a little do a spinning wheel
yeah,
thing.
all right.
But what do you think
So,
about that? Like it is sort of a socialist sort of setup. But if we
well,
could actually do that with the labor brigade and then produce
I think
things.
that the socialism, no matter what, if we are going to be talking about socialism, it has to maintain the principles that America is founded on, which is the principles of individual liberty. If you're forcing anybody to do participate in a government program that breaks that rule, then it's not part of the American tradition. And since it's not part of the American tradition, I would assume that it's most likely part of the Soviet style socialism, which is all about the government ownership of the means of production. Like
Right.
that's the thing where people kind of get confused, because like when we're talking about socialism by definition is when it was supposed to be when the proletariat takes over the means of production to make it more democratic. The way that the Soviets interpret the proletariat was when the government takes over the means of production. So they created the definition of socialism is the government. It doesn't necessarily have to be the case, because we, the people, are the government. Like,
Right.
you see what I'm saying? And so
Yeah.
as long as we uphold the principles of individual liberty and we find a way to reconcile socialism with capitalism, which I believe that we have somewhat found a way to do that, then I believe that it's worth considering.
Oh, certainly.
For new ideas going forward. So that's where
I mean, it could be so beneficial for us. It could be a win-win, Just
right.
imagine that. You get to have a sense of purpose. You get to get educated. You get to have a secure, safe income that you can rely on. You get to know you'll have somewhere to live. Like so many stresses for you are just taken out of your life. And you just get to do work and accumulate some money, and then you can go do something else if you want. You know what I mean? Like, it's giving people so much more power and structure and control over their own life by enabling them, to work and have a stability in the beginning of their life. That's why you see so many people go into the military and have such incredible social mobility, economic social mobility, because the military sets you up to move up. It takes a bunch of stresses out of your life. It gives you a ton of stability, and they tell you how to manage your money. I mean, a lot of people don't listen to it very much, but they tell you how. It sets you up to go places if you use that time wisely. And you could do the same thing with the labor brigade, and you don't have to be forced to go into it, but just imagine if it was an option. If that was just an option, how many people in America would be like, so you're telling me you're not going to pay me a living wage, but you are going to provide my housing, you are going to provide my food, you are going to provide my education, my health care. Like, you're literally going to provide everything in life that I need to live safely. And then on top of that, you're going to pay me.
Yeah, and
I'm going to move out of my parents' basement. You betcha.
And they got to know what the mission is too. Like in the military, we know the mission. We all have a mission, right? The Navy is to go out on your ship, the Marines, whatever. This labor brigade would be, their mission is to produce items cheaper for America, to make all of their lives better off. It has to still have this call to patriotism, to be able to be a person where
the improvement of the American life.
Exactly. So when somebody says, I work for the labor brigade, that's something that you could actually be proud of, because they're the reason why your laptop is cheaper, why your jeans are cheaper, why your shoes are cheaper,
why your housing is cheaper.
Yes, exactly. And like, this is all things that we could do. Like, we could actually make a reality here in America. I don't know what level of government this would have to be initiated on.
I feel like it'd be easy if it was federal. Think about it, man. If it was federal, just like the military, and they could just station you anywhere in America that we needed infrastructure, or we needed to put a plant, or we needed to produce items, that would mean that we could put factories in so many small, places with struggling economies, and just have labor brigade people, oh, you're going to go get, deployed or stationed at this factory for 2 years in Kansas. And you know what I mean? Like, it could repopulate so much of the open America. And I don't mean that in, necessarily in construction, but I mean that there's a lot of places where people have sort of drained out, just because the economy in those local areas was very hard to sustain. And if you have people who have a steady income there all the time,
Mhm.
they're going to help that economy grow as well, because they'll be putting money into the local economy while they're living there.
Right. And
So it's like,
so I think the way to properly think about stimulating a local economy is, where do you want to put the means of production? Because that's something that has to be put into the conversation as well. When we bring back these factories from China, where are we going to put them? Because those locations of those factories are going to, you know, create local economies that are going to be sustainable for that entire community. So I don't know if the question would be, do you want to bring them back here to Los Angeles to stimulate these economies, or do you
honestly, I
want to
think put
bring
them in the
them to,
Midwest.
well, these are
If
all quite serious questions that are worth considering,
I think,
they have
you
to
know,
go somewhere.
they do have to go somewhere. And I think that the Midwest has an economy that, just in general is in a more economical depression than a lot of the rest of the country, because they used to have a bunch of production. Now they don't really have anything. Put them in the Midwest, and then logistically you can ship out like this. You know what I mean? You
Mhm.
don't have to go all the way across anymore. You
Right.
know,
And
I mean,
this,
honestly, you could just target communities that you see needing help, right? Like if you see a city like Detroit, or Flint, Michigan, you see a place that needs help, that things have gone sour. Imagine if in Flint, Michigan, they had deployed this labor brigade, like a bunch of construction men and plumbers, and like they fixed the water situation. You
yeah.
could be like, yeah, I was deployed with the, 101st Builders Union,
Yeah,
and
the
we
building
fucking
brigade, and we took this over, and we
we
actually
fixed
made it
Flint,
10
Michigan's
times
water.
better. We
Yeah.
not only did we fix their water, we made them buildings on top of that with more sustainable housing. And
Could you imagine
that's,
that? Like the pride you could feel in that? Like, yeah, I was there. I did that. I helped build that place up. I helped fix that water. I helped, I made these roads. Or like, you get to have this pride in being like, yeah, I was part of this project at this place and time with this group of people, and we accomplished something, you know? And if you're seeing cities that need help with stuff, failing economies, you can inject help into that place, build up some
right.
infrastructure, put in the factories. Maybe the paychecks from these people don't have to come necessarily entirely from the government. Maybe the companies who hire these workers on, if you say you work for Nike, say we bring the Nike factories back and the labor brigade supplies labor for Nike factories. What if Nike just paid the government for however many bodies they want, in terms of laborers? They just paid it straight to the government, and all of these corporations just paid all of it straight to the government, and the government just distributed it down, into that, plus maybe some of the
Yeah,
tax dollars.
have them being some type of form of contractor, that if
Yeah,
you want to if you want to take this contract where these guys get paid, maybe Nike could even set up the housing facilities and stuff. Like that would be their way to take care of their people. If Nike wants
well,
to set up,
maybe.
well, I mean,
I,
why not? Like you can't put all the blame on the government, or all the
I'm not trying to
responsibility on
put
the
all the
government.
responsibility
No,
on the government, but what I'm saying is that, like, you have
but
to also be realistic in that Nike, in bringing to bring it back, it has to be a good deal for Nike too,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And
no,
them paying
absolutely.
to build all this housing and pay for
The
the
way
housing is a whole different deal.
the way
But if
that you
they're
make that
paying the government for each body, you can just build that into the price
if you
of the
wipe out their
government.
taxes, like they don't have to pay taxes by coming back, and the only taxes that they have to pay on these products that they produce through here at a significantly cheaper price are the what taxes associated with sales tax. I think that would probably be a good incentive for them. I think that they would come running back.
Yeah, maybe.
uh, I
Either way,
don't
the
see
point
that.
I'm getting at is that this labor brigade could be expanded in so many directions. Beyond being a builder who just works for the labor brigade and we build stuff.
Hmm.
You could also have this division, that does contracting out to companies for whatever labor they want. Or like there's just so many different options of things that you could do with this. And if you did
It's
have that mission of like, you know,
mhm.
making things cheaper, better for every American, like,
That's the goal.
and
That's
that's
absolutely the
that. I
goal.
think the every American is, you know,
Mhm.
important there. Everybody.
Yeah, that's the goal. Because whenever all the items are cheaper, because one of the things like Peter Schiff was talking about on a Joe Rogan show was how we need to make Americans more productive. And like, I understand where he's coming from because like in order to make people's lives better off, you could either make them more productive to make them be able to make more money, or you could lower the costs. So like you
Right.
could either make more money or lower the costs. And I think that for to basically art find a way to pay Americans more money is going to be very difficult. I don't think that there's a lot of ways to really improve that because it's such a competitive world, especially considering how we're a service-based economy. So like there, a lot of the services that we offer are, only the top of the top people are making movies in Hollywood or becoming the investment bankers or the top corporate lawyers, and everybody else is kind of getting smushed in the middle. So that's why like we need to bring production back. Um,
Right.
and so like you can't pay people more by artificially raising the minimum wage to say like, hey, we need $15 minimum wage, because what happens? Well, we already saw what happens when that happened, which was like previously it used to cost $8 for you to go get lunch, right? But now, which was an hour's worth of wages. Now it costs you around $15 to go get lunch, which still is equivalent to an hour's worth of wages. So we know from our empirical evidence that raising the minimum wage doesn't really do anything. We've also talked about like the idea of profit sharing, where we could like find a way to equitably distribute the profits to the lowest members of like a company like McDonald's to be able to pay them more. But I still don't think that might solve the issue. It would raise, I think it's still worth considering, but I don't think that
Well,
it would solve the issue for everybody, which is that we need to be able to get society to a point where we don't need to worry about money anymore.
well, but one way that you can, you know, effectively pay people more is by what we were talking about with this whole labor brigade thing, in that if you take care of all of the things that are important for someone to need done, you know, their housing, their food, their
Refrigerator.
refrigerator, you know, a bed, like, think, you know, when you take care of all that stuff for them, you can pay them a lot less and they'll still be pretty darn happy. You know,
Yes,
think how much you
that's
get paid as an E1. Nothing. Like, I think my first paycheck in the military was like $2.
yeah, I think I remember mine. It was like $32, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh my! I almost cried. I was like, what
Yeah.
the heck?
And like, and then, you know, for like a year after that, I was getting paid like $200, I think, a month or something. It was low. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I was still overwhelmingly happy because all of that money that I was getting paid, even if it was very little, was like just all for me. You know what I
Right.
mean? I didn't have to spend it on my rent or my phone, or, you know, like I didn't have to spend it on anything except stuff I want to do, you know? And oh, and boy, did I for my first year. Jeez, I was such an idiot with my money. I could be sitting on so much money if I had been smarter when I was younger. Oh my God.
It's
I
everybody.
was, I blew through my, like E1 and E2. I just blew through all that money. I was balling out. I was like, yeah, this is so cool, you know? But, you know,
Yeah.
whatever. At least I had fun. But that's the point, is like, you know, I wasn't getting paid very much. You know, you weren't getting paid very much, but you still have like this really pretty solid quality of life, you know?
And
And
not to mention,
that's the important thing, you
yeah,
know?
you're gonna meet other people and get you know
A community.
yeah, no, but you're going to be exposed to a diverse background. Like that's exactly what I was. I never met people from the South, from Alabama, from Texas, from all of these different places, and like
Dude,
that's what the military does. Like if you want diversity, like there's nothing more diverse than the
they've been on
military.
the
I'll tell you
forefront of
that.
diversity
I'll
forever.
tell you that. Like
Dude,
I've
before
never
I went in the
say
Navy, I had never even heard of the Philippines. You know how many Filipinos are in the Navy? It's like
All of
a
them.
lot. Yeah, dude, it's a ton. Well, the Navy used to recruit directly out of the Philippines. Anyway, there's tons.
Yeah.
I'd never even heard of a Filipino before boot camp. And then in boot camp, I had, a ton of Filipinos in with me. And I was like, where is this?
Yeah.
Like I was meeting people that I had no idea about. My high school had 2 black kids,
Wow.
2 kids from China, and like 1 Indian kid, and everyone else was white from Colorado, and just like a Bible Belt, typical America. Like
Yeah.
my boot camp division was, I think, it was more black people than in one room than I had ever seen before. Honestly, my division was 80 guys, and in that room there was more people of color than I think I had ever seen at all. Like, outside of traveling outside of the country. And I became friends with so many of those people, and I became friends with people from like so many different backgrounds. You know what I mean? Like people from the deep South, and also, my other friends from like Russia and, China and Canada and,
Yeah,
California,
and
Tennessee, like
and you're friends
Alabama.
with pretty much with all of them because like you're
Yeah.
all united behind this one idea, which was you wanted to uh, do something for America. In this
Yeah.
case, that uniting idea would be to make American products cheaper. Which
Yeah.
I think
To
that's
build up America.
mhm. And you might get a GI Bill out of it, so like that'd be cool.
Yeah. I only see it as a good thing. I mean, honestly,
Yeah,
if this was a thing, I would think about just going into it even at this stage in my life. And the thing about this that's cool is that with the labor brigade, with the military, there's a lot of age requirements on when you can get in. With the labor brigade, there's so much different types of work.
yeah.
Who's to say that you couldn't get into that and just have steady work, a lot of the time?
Yeah, I mean,
I
well,
think,
we have to build more housing. That's something we know we need to do. Like, if we could get the labor brigade to be so productive to where, like, yes, it would be unfortunate to knock down people's housing, but if we can make a deal for them, to be like, hey, we're going to knock down this area, we're going to build you your own new house, and you're going to be able to put your family on top of you, or something like that, to make it better for everybody. So we're taking advantage of this room, like like we're here in Los Angeles, we're dealing with a lot of problems. Like, like there's this housing problems. There's, everybody wants to have this huge mansion, but everybody can't squeeze into these tiny little areas. And like, we have to, find a way to address that, and again, it has to be by volunteer.
well,
It
but
can't,
the,
it
the other
can't, it
thing
can't,
is that, you know, it doesn't necessarily, given, this world that we're temporarily living in with this, where this labor brigade exists, right? This thought project. That doesn't even have to be much of a problem, because most of the United States is pretty sparsely populated. The reason that places like, Los Angeles and New York City are so overcrowded is because we live in such a service-based economy, and those are two of the places with the most services provided, right? So you're forced to try and fit yourself into this community where the jobs are, even though there's no housing. But if you have this thing where we're able to produce all this stuff and we have people building things all over the place, the work doesn't have to be in two major cities, which is essentially how the model works right now, is everyone's going into a city to work. And that's where the majority of the jobs are, because that's where service type things are found, is in the collection of people, but it doesn't have to be that way, right? Like, we could move the jobs all over the place and spread them out, and then people could have, roomier housing in more places. And you don't necessarily need, everybody doesn't need their own home on a street with a backyard and everything. It's nice to have, I admit, but it's not necessary. You can live in like a big complex with a communal garden and things like that, and it's still very nice. I lived in
well,
one when I was in Berlin, like the
that we're not
giant
we're not
building
trying
with
to take over the entire private sector either. Like, this is
yeah.
just enough to be able to make enough housing for the people in the labor corps and enough housing that they could continue to produce, to be able to make people, when they get out of the labor corps, they know they have a place to live,
Right.
or they're making senior living facilities. They're making all of the things that we
Hospitals.
know, hospitals, things that we know that we need in society. Um,
Fixing
and
all of our bridges. Oh
yeah,
man.
like there's so many things, like, and that's all stuff that we know that, like, I know that for a fact that both sides, the Democrats and the conservatives, know that we need to invest in infrastructure. Like
I mean,
that's something that everybody agrees in. It's just the way that we go about financing it is the tough part, because the Democrats' only solution is to finance it with taxation, and like taxation is great, like, but it's something that is
we're already so
unsustainable.
overtaxed
Yeah,
anyway.
and so there's more creative ways. Taxation is the least effective way to like make our economy better. Like, you can't just tax from the rich and give to the poor, because like that doesn't really solve much. It might solve a temporary problem, which is temporarily distributing income, but like it's not going to make anybody's lives better off. That's the real goal, is to make everybody's lives better off.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think, we've probably covered this pretty well. And I think it's apparent that however it would be implemented, it would certainly, I think, necessarily, to survive, need to be, a partnership between the government and between some corporations in order to foot the bill. Building factories for companies, they pay for the factory, and then you supply the labor, or then they filling the factory with laborers, and you supply the laborers and they pay for them, or like there could be some kind of a deal worked out. But I think that
I think
in
it's
order for it
important.
to work, it would need to be working between the government and the corporations, right? Like it would have to be a partnership.
I think it's important to prove that it can be done first, and to not just jump into things. Because like when you look at the Soviet Union, one of the things that where they went wrong was when Stalin basically collectivized everything at the same time. And
Right.
that basically meant that he took over the means of production, and it was all a socialist under communist control now. And that's like, I think it's important to gradually go into things, and to test and prove it. And I think a great idea, to be able to prove it, using the Nike example, if they were to take one shoe, for instance, just one shoe, and prove that they could produce it at the cheapest rate possible and get it out to the world, and maybe even test the numbers of how much profit that they could make off of that. Because I truly believe if they scale things up to where they can produce this shoe for let's say $40, instead of the $200 Jordan shoe for $40, to get it out to the world. And where if it's a $40, then you treat that shoe kind of like a van shoe, for instance. So now you're like, okay, well, I replace my van shoe every couple months whenever they get beat up, and then you get another fresh pair of Jordans. And so like that, there's still going to be consistent demand as if the shoes are cheaper. And so I think
Right.
if they could be able to produce it with one product and prove to the world that, hey, this is possible, if only we just eliminate this class hierarchy within our own companies. Because companies like Nike, it's very obvious that they're on the forefront of social justice. Like they're sponsoring with Kaepernick and all of this, but they don't look within to see how they could actually do things to make everybody's lives better off. And the place where I would suggest them to start would be to eliminating their own class hierarchy and producing things cheaper for everybody else. However they have to get there, I don't know. It's worth them looking into.
I mean, I think the issue given that model is that you're putting the onus on the company to change the way that does things, right? Because it's better for everyone. And, theoretically, the argument is, well, it'll be better for them too in the long run. But I also think that lots of companies are very resistant to having to deal with things like that. We live in like a really short run economy. I mean, look at how over leveraged everyone is. That's not a good long run plan for any business. But yet all of America's businesses are way over leveraged, right? So trying to put the onus on them is, I think, not necessarily as effective as injecting competition into the marketplace that they occupy, right? You know, if the government is producing a shoe that every American can afford and no American ever has to go barefoot ever, you know, if they're producing that, or even if they're producing it and shipping it worldwide, they're producing the best, cheapest shoe, then Nike would have to up their game. You know what I mean? Like, you're just injecting, you can inject this competition using
You
government.
can inject it, but the only thing when the problem with
You're
that
not taking over Nike
is that no,
factories.
no, I understand that. The only problem with that is the marketing issue, which is like, why do people buy Jordans versus Shaqs? You
I mean,
know,
yeah, sure. But I also
so
think that if you could have like, okay, let's look at a different model, like laptops. How many people would love to just be able to pick up a laptop
okay,
and not have break the bank?
okay, I see what your point is. I see what your point is. Taking away the stylistic point from Nike, because that's a style point for their shoes. There are multiple utilities that we use in our everyday lives. For instance, a laptop, a chair, a refrigerator, all of these things that we
Tires
know
for your
that,
car.
yeah, tires for your car, things that we know that we can produce that with a generic label on them at a much cheaper, more price efficient way to compete to compete with these other firms.
Right.
Um,
And the thing is,
and
you could do that with the government running it without it having to break the bank or increase our taxes. Because
mm,
theoretically, if the government is running this business at, you know, peak efficiency and they're actually turning a profit, right, which is
right,
how it should run, not, well, we're going to make this shoe and we're going to lean on taxes to make it super cheap. No, actually use economies of scale. You're the government, take a big loan out from yourself, get up to economies of scale rapidly, and then sell the shoe, you know, or the laptop or whatever for the cheapest you can, while still turning, you know, like some small 1% profit or something to cover inflation, right? Like,
well, yeah,
you
no,
could run an
I
operation
see,
like that
I
and
see
not
what you're
have it kill
saying.
the taxpayers and still have the, you know, the company, you know, making money. And if you pair this with like the labor brigade idea, you could have it, you know, working some kind of way with those two things as well, right? And if the,
Right.
you know, if the other competition in the market has the same access to employees from the labor brigade as the government does, you know, it's a fair playing field, right? You're
Mhm.
not creating a government monopoly on industry, which I think would be bad, right? Because if you use the government to, you know, undercut all of these companies in the short term, everything will be cheap, and in the long term, everything will collapse because they'll just be running on credit forever, and like, not a good plan. But I think, you know, if you're injecting competition and keeping the competition fair between the companies and the government, because the government can compete with the companies, it totally could, you know what I mean?
Uh,
Like, then I think we would see things get better, because then if you know, make this laptop that everybody can have, now I think a lot of people would, you know, especially if they grow up using, you know, the labor core laptop, right? If they
yeah.
grew up using that and it's worked fine for their whole life and it didn't cost them anything, or it was very, very cheap or whatever, you know, I feel like more people would be less likely to be like, oh, I need a new MacBook. Oh, I need a new, you know,
Yeah.
PC. Like, because they'd be like, well, I've had this forever and it works fine. And like, if I want to get another one, it costs me nothing. Whereas if my MacBook breaks, I have to take it to, you know, the geek
Mhm.
nerds or
So,
whoever, and they're going to
so,
charge me $8,000 to fix it. Like,
so, so I 100% see what you're saying, and like I would, you know, I would accept that as one potential model. But I think another potential model that we should consider is also just like, what if we just provided the labor aspect of things? So, for instance, a company like Nike, a company like Apple, they send the labor that they actually really need to do the production stuff to China. What if the labor brigade just does the production element for them? That we have, the Apple has a partnership through us to be able to produce here. But in order to produce here, you have to, there's a sacrifice that needs to be, you know, made, which is to be able to produce at a cheaper price. You know, maybe Apple could have their special laptop through us. You know, versus somebody else. And I think that that's
Well, that's what I was saying, in that you can share the labor brigade, right? Like if you
Mhm.
have the government producing this whatever laptop for whatever price, and then Apple says, okay, we're going to try and create a competitor with your cheapo laptop, which I couldn't see Apple doing because it doesn't fit in with their whole elitist Apple cult thing that they have
right.
going on. Apple wouldn't do that.
They don't
They'd
have to.
maintain their elitist thing that they do, which is fine. But in this world, let's imagine that they're like, okay, we're going to compete with you and create, a MacBook for everyone, that so that everyone in America is using a MacBook.
Mhm.
We're going to hire on the labor brigade, so now our labor costs are the same as the government's, right? And like then they should theoretically, if they have this factory or whatever, it should be the same playing field, right? Like
Mhm.
especially if you've worked out some sort of a tax situation for companies working inside of America,
Right.
right? I mean, I don't know, but I think no matter what, and I think both of us agree on this, that at the end of the day you would need the government and the corporations you know working together in some fashion, whether they're competing with each other, and that's a
Or
form of working together,
yeah.
right? Or there's supplying labor or funds or like whatever's going on. There would need to be some sort of an interaction. They would definitely need to be working with each other in some kind of way, I think, in order for it to really really work
Yeah. No,
well.
I think you're correct.
So it's a fascinating idea. I like to ruminate on that. It's just I like to imagine it. I feel like I could see myself doing something like that.
No,
Like
it sounds like
I would be happy to do that if I could just go
I,
be like, yeah, I'm gonna go do this thing and I'm gonna have my life and I'm gonna go
the
build
cool thing
America.
the cool thing about it is like I see so much potential with it. Like let's say like a small business person, they design some really cool t-shirt, right? You're just, it doesn't cost much to make one t-shirt, but if let's say everybody loves this t-shirt, and now you pitch this t-shirt kind of like on Shark Tank, but to the labor brigade. And you're like, hey, like I could sell this t-shirt, like, because we all know how like designer t-shirts are actually could get like insane prices, like anywhere from 50 to like you could even go up in the $300 range. But what if everybody's wearing the same cool shirts like those for cheap?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's just like, oh yeah, now all the top designers are making the best stuff for everybody. And then you're literally reducing the class structures in society that everybody is that arguing about. And so then afterwards, the next logical step would be for like what would humans do now that we don't need to worry about like material wealth anymore. And that's a deeper question, but I think it's
Well, I
the
think we're a
first step.
long ways off from having to
Yeah,
answer that question.
yeah, no, yeah,
Labor
that's like
brigade or not, I think that's gonna be
yeah,
a while.
right. But I also think it's completely possible to make these products cheap, very very quick.
Yeah, no, and I think it would be good to see how things would evolve.
Like
I think
I would say like if
there's a
we
sense of urgency
I would
that
say
we
within the
have.
next 20 years, if we adopted this now, within the next 20 years, like we would see insane amount of growth in terms of a world economy, because like we would be competing with other nations, but they would also probably adopt the same model as us. They're like, hey, oh shoot, we totally forgot that we could make food in our own nation. We totally forgot that we could make our own shoes because we know how to take Nike shoe and reverse engineer it and make it just as good. As a matter of fact, if you're China, you know how to make everything that America knows how to make.
Yeah,
You know what I
because
mean?
you're the one who makes it.
Exactly, exactly. And that's why I think it's important. The next conversation is that like the reason I think this is important is because we have to deal with China. And the best way to properly deal with China is to just kill them with kindness, and to be able to send our own products to them and be like, hey, we know that you guys gave us products for a long period of time. Here, we're going to produce for you guys now as well. So you could share the things that we like. And hopefully, maybe you might be able to reciprocate a little bit and we can get some more ideas of free competitive trade where everybody is happy.
Right.
But like it's unsustainable to just to force China to believe that China is going to continue producing for us without us producing at all. like that doesn't make any sense for me. So like that's why the labor brigade is necessary, or
Well,
something
that's
like
why,
it.
because our credit's going to run out.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly. Well, it's already running out. And what happens then? What happens then? Where it's which is the war aspect of it. Like people have already started talking about this Thucydides trap again. That's something that like they've been talking about for probably the last 5 years, which is when like a greater power, a rising power challenges like the current top power. Like 9 times out of 10, they end up at war, which doesn't have to be the case. Like I'm not arguing for that at all. I don't think that we have to go to war with China, and I think that we could, you know, back pump the brakes a little bit, you know.
Yeah, I'd rather not.
Yeah, I'd rather not go to war with them either. They don't want to go to war. Like if we go to war, like it doesn't matter if we adopt the factory system or not. Like what's it called always ends up bad. War always ends up bad. But yeah, I'm yeah, that's all I really got to say about that.
Yeah. Well, I think we really condensed down the idea this time.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty happy about that. Like I said,
Yeah.
good ruminations, I think. I think
Yeah, labor
interested
brigade.
to see what happens over the next week, honestly. I would love to see somebody who knows what they're talking about, somebody with a voice, get talking about this. Let's get Sunil Gulati talking about
Oh,
it.
that would be so cool, actually.
Or I just would like people to start mulling this idea around, because
Especially
man,
like
just dream about it.
I feel like
Dare to
it's,
dream.
it really, I think I've done my homework in terms of like understanding like socialist theory to be able to understand like what they're actually talking about. And so like, I think like I have a decent understanding now of like what actually needs to be able to be done to be able to create more wealth for the overall nation, to make everybody's lives better off. Like there's no magic answer, which like the Democrats would basically suggest, which is
It's
to
taxes.
tax the poor. And then the Republicans would say, oh, we just need to have unregulated free market capitalism. And they're wrong as well.
Yeah.
So like that's why like this problem is very serious, and we're trying to take it serious here on this channel.
Yeah, so
Liberation Academy.
Let's integrate some ideas. Let's start getting some progress.
Yeah.
Resolving conflicts.
Yeah.
We can do this, people. We can do this. Let's actually try and fight for living in a society worth living in.
Yeah. All right.
Peter Gabriel.
We'll see you guys next week. To Liberation Academy out.